Good morning from my seat in the forest. Talking about something a little bit downer, actually. I was going to talk about the ridiculous Hamas casualty figures, but I thought we've had a huge tragedy here in Israel over the last couple of days because we've had 12 young people killed in flash floods in the desert. Two Bedouin in separate incidents swept away by sudden flash flooding, and I think the latest thing is 10 Jewish kids on a school trip or a field trip all washed away and died in the most horrific I'll say accident. But the trouble is, knowing what I know and having seen what I've seen, whoever took kids out and whoever doesn't teach Bedouin kids how to deal with flash floods in the desert, there's a huge responsibility there, because I'm going to instill in my kids some knowledge that if they're ever on a school trip and they're 15, 16, 17 and somebody says to go for a walk in the desert when you know there is rain elsewhere in Israel, you tell the teacher no politely. If the teacher still tells you to go, you tell the teacher no impolitely, and then you cling to the bus. If you're already on the walk and you think there might have been rain within 50 kilometers of where you're standing, you climb the walls of the canyon. You climb them and you get out of any low areas. Because I'll tell you what happened to me in 2000 and I always forget, is it 4 or 5? 2005, I think. So I'd been on a tour of Sri Lanka with my wife. We'd spent the first half of the tour touring on a bus, visiting sites, spending some time on a game reserve. Amazing trip. And then the last week and a half of the holiday was to be spent at a beach hotel on the western side of Sri Lanka. That's the same side as Colombo, between two places called Galle on the south, right at the tip, and Colombo. We were 2/3 of the way towards Colombo. And so we'd been on this long bus trip for over a week, and then the day before, so on Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, we arrived at this beautiful beach hotel with some sort of rooms at ground level, and then it was about a three-story hotel. Nice dining room, beautiful palm trees, wonderful swimming pool, and a garden. And at the end of the garden was a small beach and the Indian Ocean. So we were there. We arrived on Christmas Day, checked in, had a look around, went to sleep. We woke up on Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, and got our things, went and had breakfast, then went out into the garden to find some sunbeds to lie in. So we find a sunbed, and I'm looking out to the sea, and there seems to have been a big tide, but it's my first day there. I haven't been there to observe. And so while we were looking for the sunbed, the sea had gone out. And I've been in other places in the world. I've been like in Hamilton Island, for example, in Australia, near the Great Barrier Reef, where every day they have enormous tides, such that literally the beach goes a kilometre away. And this is normal. It's a very, very flat shelf. There's quite a big tidal movement. And for some hours, you can't take a boat out, or there's just no beach. The sea's gone. And 4 hours later, it comes back. But it was my first day there, so I was seeing the sea had gone, and I thought, that's odd, but I've got no reference point. I haven't been watching the sea in this location. Then the staff at the hotel came out, and they started pulling up the beach chairs and telling everybody to get out, to get up. And they got us up off our loungers, and they told us to take all our things and go back to the hotel. And they were putting all the chairs away. And they were putting the chairs away. And I'm like, and then they started shouting. I mean, the staff got really, and they didn't explain why. They just said, everybody out of the garden. And by the time they said that, I looked and I saw that the sea was coming back, and there were some fishermen kind of trying to deal with a boat. They pulled their boat out of the water and up past the beach and into the trees that were at the garden between us and the sea. And I thought, everything now was starting to feel and look weird. So we got up, took all our stuff, went up to the first level of the hotel. As we get up there, and I've got my camera, and I start snapping. It was one of the first digital SLRs. Didn't have a video camera handy. This is pre-cell phone, pre-iPhone. And suddenly now, and it happened really quickly, the sea has come back, all the way back, and actually passed back, and it's now at this little fence in the gardens that separated the pool area from the short, small beach. And these fishermen are trying to deal with their boat, but the sea is rising and the boat is getting banged against the trees, and they're trying to save it, and it's the course of another 30 seconds, the water's now come over the sort of rise, and it's flowing down towards where the swimming pool is. It's a sort of a little bit lower, and suddenly the water, again, it's another 15-20 seconds, the water is up against the terrace of the hotel. And again, there's no wave. It's not like the big waves that you might have seen from Thailand. There was no wave. You never saw a wave. What you saw was a series of ripples that never went back. If you watch the sea, you always see the little wavelet, but it goes back out. It never went out. So it just incrementally got higher and higher. And it took all of 5 minutes before the sea had come over the edge of the garden and was now flowing through the restaurant. Flowing. 10 minutes, and it's a river. It's like, and we went from the first floor up to the second floor, and we're all standing on a big balcony looking down, and we're on a concrete hotel. I mean, it's sturdily built, we hope, but what you're looking down at is something like a fast-flowing river, like the Thames, at full movement, but it goes all the way that you can see to the left and to the right, i.e. all the way up the coast, as far as you can see, and it's flowing. Then some of these fishermen had been swept in. They went through the dining room, through the broken plate glass windows, swirling around with the beach furniture, and the water was just horrible. And a couple of these guys were rescued. People put down bed sheets. I'm not kidding about this. From the balcony at the back of the hotel, they were rescued from like a little courtyard and dragged out of the water. Many of them died that day. These fishermen. All of the guests had been got upstairs. The hotel staff had got food out of the ground floor and brought food and water. And for about 20 minutes, it's this flow of water. And what happened was the Indian Ocean flowed more than a kilometre inland behind our hotel, almost to a railway line that ran past the car park of the hotel. And in fact, further south, the tsunami hit a railway carriage and hundreds of people died there. And then the water starts going back the other way, and it starts going back out, and it's carrying whatever you think you could do in that water, you couldn't. All you could do is get very, very lucky and survive, maybe, or die. And dying is the biggest chance. There's broken glass. It's gone through plate glass windows. It's taking plate glass windows back out. Everything is swirling around in this horrible mess of water. And it all happened it went from zero, from calm, to about in a half an hour to this just power. And it totally destroyed the ground floor of the hotel. Totally destroyed it. There were some rooms on the ground floor. Anybody in those rooms, and this happened for us about, I think it was 9:45 in the morning, 9:30. Everybody got out. The staff got everybody out. Nobody died in our hotel. Nobody from the staff died. And they got out. And the reason they knew was that the wave had hit Galle, which is, the wave had come from the eastern side of Sri Lanka, hit the eastern side, and then wrapped around and hit the west side. And the staff at this hotel had been in touch with their sister hotel in Galle. And their hotel in Galle had been high up on the hill and had watched the tsunami take Galle. And they phoned up and said, get everybody out of the gardens. And it was about another 10 or 15 minutes warning that we had. Now, exactly 1 week before, my wife and I had been staying in a game reserve where we'd all got horribly sick. Almost everybody on the trip got horrible food poisoning. And that game reserve had beach-level huts. And the people on the east got hit an hour earlier or something. And they didn't even have the drawdown. And we found out fairly soon later that basically everybody, 2 or 3 survivors, and I think 1 jeep of Japanese tourists that had gone out early. Everybody else was dead at that hotel. Dead. Tourists, staff, everybody. I'm in Israel, by the way. And the reason I'm telling you this is what's happened in Israel is kids have gone out on a trip in the desert. Now, when you walk through that part of the desert, which I've spent quite a lot of time in, because my friend Kate used to live down there in Arad, and I've been 4x4ing with Ryan Bellerose there and with my family. And it is impossibly to describe beautiful, the desert. But cut through all of the desert are these channels of where water once flows or does flow. And the thing about the desert and rain is that it doesn't get much, but when it gets it, it flows right through it. And the thing that's devastatingly dangerous about rain down in the desert here is that it can be raining 50 kilometers away, and it can take hours, not a long time, but an hour and a half for the water to move. So you can be in a place that's bone dry, sun beating down on you, and you might, if you're lucky, hear a little rumble. And then you might just see a little trickle. And then the little trickle will be joined by another little wave, just like I saw in the tsunami on Boxing Day. And the next wave will come, and it will get a little bit higher. And it won't be this, it can be, but it probably won't be this sort of barreling cartoon wave coming down a canyon. But the thing is, when you see that water, and if you're in a canyon, you have to climb the walls to get out of there. You have to get higher. And I've read some of the accounts now that say that some of these kids were apparently told, or they were trying to wade through the water. If you're in the water, you really are on a knife edge, because once it gets up to your knees, you cannot stand. And the speed with which this water climbs, powerful water, you just don't. You can't beat it. It will beat you and it will kill you. And these kids' bodies were washed 10 kilometers away, which doesn't even remotely surprise me. After the tsunami in Sri Lanka, after the Boxing Day tsunami, we were all fine. The hotel was fine. They even got the power it was totally surreal, because they got the power turned on by about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we had, the water went out and then it came back in again and it went out. There were 2 or 3, I think 3 significant waves, and then it died away. And the mess. And we sat in our room. They got the power back on because they turned it off before the water arrived. They had food, they had bottled water. We were fine. So we weren't a candidate for evacuation. We actually had to stay out the rest of our holiday. You know, no pool. They worked like, the Sri Lankan people were amazing. They worked so hard to tidy up, to give us a holiday of some sorts, because we couldn't go anywhere, because we went only one time. We left the hotel property, and either side of the hotel was where poor people lived, on basically on close to the beaches. Everybody was dead. There was tens of thousands of people were killed within a few dozen kilometers of where we were. And we left everything that was, all our medicines. They didn't want clothes. There was no point with clothes. Sri Lanka produces clothes for the whole world, and that's all done inland. There was no shortage of clothes. It wasn't cold. We left pencils. We stole all the hotel, the writing stuff, because the kids had nothing to do. Surviving kids, we gave it all to. We took a little tuk-tuk to a church. It's just nothing you can do. And the first time we stepped off the hotel property was when we realized the scale of this thing and the power, the just sheer unimaginable power of what this water does. You don't ever mess with nature. There's no risk. You cannot beat it. You will not beat it. It doesn't matter what you are. And so here in Israel, like I said, my kids, if I ever hear they're going to the desert and it's not July, August, September, or even September, I'd worry. If there's even a hint of rain anywhere in southern Israel, get out. You do not be walking through valleys. If you're at the top of a canyon, looking down in a canyon, you're okay, probably. But even then, you don't want to be near the sides, because you never know when there's going to be a landslide caused by the water flowing down below. The whole place becomes... The desert is dangerous. Look, you've got to be careful. You've got to know what you're doing. You've got to go with good guides. I don't take 4x4ing there lightly either. I always go with pairs and other people. You don't have cell phone coverage in all of it. But I don't know. It sounds irresponsible to have taken kids out there this day. It's a horrible tragedy. It's a horrible tragedy for the Bedouin kids lost as well. Everybody needs to understand water in the desert. How rare it is, but when it happens, what it does. And it's powerful. And that tsunami changed my outlook on life, because I just realized how close we all were to death. The week before, had we been sleeping, I mean, I remember distinctly, I had horrific food poisoning. My wife, not so bad. I would have woken up in a room, dehydrated, sick with food poisoning, and water lapping over my bed. And then I would have died 4 minutes later, pressed against the roof of that room, drowned. That's what would have happened to me if the tsunami had happened 1 week earlier, or if I'd been on the trip the other way round, because we could have done the sitting on a beach and then the tour of Sri Lanka. If our holiday had been that way round, I would have been dead. I reckon it would have taken 4 minutes. 4 minutes trapped in a hotel room, trying to work out how you can get out while you're floating on a bed that's getting pushed to the ceiling. That's how they died. So I don't dick around. I'll never sleep in I went to Thailand a few years later. I refused to sleep in the bed in the rooms on the beach level. I only wanted a room 2 or 3 floors up. I won't go to sleep. I won't go to sleep facing a large body of water that has any chance of a tsunami. I won't do it. And I know the sign. If I see the water running away from me, I run the other way. Climb up. Anyway, that's enough stuff. Maybe I'll drone, but that will be on Facebook. I'll drone later. Bye all.